How long do you think racism, white supremacy, will continue to be the most dominant system on the planet?
Probably about another 1,000 years, 2,000 at the most. 1,000 is about as long as any empire lasts. 2,000 years, that's about it. For the Romans, Greeks, Chinese, Japanese, there were other empires that fell within Japan and China. And those empires don't last long. 2,000 is about the longest anything has ever lasted, and that's what we call African Egyptian history. But it's just not going to last anymore, about another 1,000, I suppose. But if we don't do something quickly, Africa will be an all-white country in the next 100 years.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us, Dr. Afrika. It was a real privilege to hear from you. And, I hope people support the workshop. Again, it's going to be February 19th, February 20th in Brooklyn, New York. If you want to get more information, you heard from King Simon. You can call him up, 718-363-8043. The number again, 718-363-8043. And as you heard from King Simon, $40, you can get a discount, you'll save some dough, and you'll get excellent information for 2 days. The website, www.drafrika.com, www.drafrika.com. Thank you so much. Learned a ton, and I hope tons of people come out to support the workshop in Brooklyn later this month.
All right. Thank you, my brother. Thanks, Gus. Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Have a fantastic evening. Context of white supremacy. We took a commercial break. I will not take another break. Justice, do you have any thoughts on the information that you heard today?
It seems like he didn't really care about being on this program, kind of.
Why do you say that?
Because, like the way how he was talking, the way how he was talking, at the beginning of the program. So, I think it was because he was maybe nervous. I don't know. Interesting.
I might have to go back and listen. Do you think he had constructive information?
Yeah. And he also says that it will maybe take 1,000 or 2,000 years for racism, white supremacy to be gone. I mean, that's just way over the board.
What do you mean when you say way over the board?
That's just a long time.
Oh, you don't think it's going to take that long?
No.
Oh. Optimistic. Like children. Children, if we could get more children, they, impatience.
Context of white supremacy. Talk to him, Whitney. Woo! Today's date, Friday, June 11, 2020. This is Gus T. Renegade, Context of White Supremacy, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. I cannot believe we finally made it. I did not think I was going to survive. Woo! Final installment. Worst book ever. Dr. Llaila O. Afrika. Nutritional Destruction of Black People. So thankful to be done. And we only have one section. We got a, not double whammy, but we got a double bonus. Last section, and we only have one full audio segment, and we are conclusion. The audio segment that you heard at the beginning, co-host at the Context of White Supremacy, Justice, all of 11 years old, You can go back and listen to the entire broadcast when Dr. Africa was with us in 2011. But that is a question we asked many people on the broadcast over the years. How long do you think it will take for for white supremacy to be replaced with justice? And I mean, wow. We've had 50,000 years, 10,000 years, 2,000 years. Anything once we get to the thousands. Now, it might take that long. Maybe. I don't know. I'm ignorant. I'm still learning. Maybe it'll take 1,000 years or 2,000 years or 50,000 years. All I can say is that all of those numbers, I haven't heard any problem. Just putting that in context, there's no problem I'm aware of. Climate change, establishing a colony on Mars, like looking for ET in outer space, like there is no problem that I am aware of where the timetable for getting this problem corrected is 10,000 years, 2,000 years, like nothing. I'm not aware of any problem that white people are looking at where they think, oh yeah, in about 2,000 years we're going to have this corrected. Now maybe I haven't seen their schematics, but most of the big things that they talk about, it's something that, oh yeah, we are going to knock this down like maybe 100 years, maybe 10 days, but something manageable. Most of us are probably going to see the completion of this. That's the way I think it's best to go about problems, because 1,000 years, like once you start talking like that, might as well go smoke crack. Anywho, last section. We're at the end of chapter 5, and then we'll just go right to the conclusion of the text. I thought it was important. Dr. Africa, in his answer, he said that if we don't, get our act together, the country of Africa, I had to listen to it several times. He said the country of Africa is going to be white. Strive for accuracy. I've said this book has a lot of errors. Now, he was on the way out, and, I might not have been paying attention and all the rest, but he said the country of Africa. Continent, not a country. And it's been a decade since that broadcast. Not really hearing or seeing evidence that white people are the majority on the continent. Now, we might have to see COVID-19. That could be a part of the plan to change things. But what I have heard them talking about a lot is, oh, man, just in Nigeria alone, it's going to be 1 billion people in 100 years. That's what they said, 2,100. You can look at the UNESCO's population report for 2014 references. They said Nigeria, just Nigeria, which is a country, will have a population of 1 billion. Now, maybe that's a lot of white folks going in. Maybe they'll all look like Britney Spears. But that was not the tone of the report. It was, oh gosh, more dark people. That's what it sounded like. But anywho, woo, worst book ever, worst book ever, worst book ever. And we're done. It doesn't even matter anymore. Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Whitney. Context of White Supremacy. Nutritional destruction of black people. The conclusion. The Untold Caucasian History. Dirt, Fart, Feces, Fun, and Sex. The European relationship to health is reflected in their relationship to the soil, which they call dirt. The soil provides the plants that we eat. A healthy relationship with dirt indicates a healthy relationship with your body. However, many factors help to create a negative, hostile, and in many ways distorted relationship between the Caucasian and dirt. The Ice Age and Cold Age that followed created nutrient-poor soil. The many mudslides, floods, thunderstorms, and subsequent forest fires stripped the land of valuable topsoil. This caused good dirt to be scarce. This inadvertently caused famines, food shortages, and starvation. The ancient European population consisted of gangs, thieves, roaming bandits, cannibal gangs, wild dogs which ate humans, people attacking each other, diseases, violence, water shortage, rape, looting, filthy, unlighted homes and cities, dead bodies and manure hills, and people who stayed dirty in fear of water. Because the dirt was unable to provide adequate food and the many taboos about cleanliness, the Caucasian developed many myths and superstitions about dirt. The Caucasian's language refers to dirt in many ways, such as dirty shame, filthy rich, dirty dancing, dirty lie, dirty words, dirty dog, dirty nigger, dirt poor, dirty sex, etc. They believe the human race evolved from dirt and that humans are made from dust. In reality, humans are approximately 80% water, which means they may have been made from water and not dirt. Caucasians use dirt as money, such as yellow dirt or crystallized dirt. Today they make synthetic tasty dirt called bleached white flour, sugar, etc. In their past, it was believed that dirty children were healthy. Women's dirty faces were believed to block out the sun. If the Caucasian woman was unwashed and had a foul body odor and a foul-smelling vagina, then she was considered sexy. Other people were considered dirty. Sartre wrote in Huey Clo that hell is full of dirty people. Dirty people were believed to contaminate society and needed to be murdered. In their genocide against each other, they refer to it as racial cleansing. This is an expression for getting rid of dirt. The original reason why the Khazars and Caucasian Muslims did not eat pigs had nothing to do with the bacteriology or worm infestation of the pigs. Khazars worshipped the pig and thought the pig was sacred, not dirty. If cleanliness were truly the reason, then cats would be eaten as food instead of cattle and fish. On the early explorations of Africa, the Americas, the Caucasian sailors would eat the dogs, then the cats, then the rats, then their leather boots, shoes, hats, ropes, etc. Since their leather items were not made from pig, it was considered clean flesh food to eat. They would eat bone, meal, cooked in fat, and insects, and the food found in a dead animal's stomach, along with the animal's feces. This indicates confusion about what is and is not dirty. The ancient Caucasians' behaviors indicate a mixed and at the same time confused relationship between dirt, food, sex, medicine, health, and disease. In primitive Caucasian rituals, feces is symbolic of gifts, death, money, babies, the penis, art, spirits, sex, poison, foreigners, disorder, gold, the vagina, golden eggs, candy, food, etc. In books such as The Ontogenesis in the Interest of Money by Sandor Ferzini, Studies in Psychology of Sex by Havelock Ellis, and Character and Anal Eroticism by Sigmund Freud, it is reported that anal sex ideas of Caucasians begin in childhood when weird feces associations are made by Caucasian babies playing with their own feces in the diaper. The babies play with mud, sand, pebbles, hair, buttons, fingers, lips, and coins because it is associated with feces. The coins are seen as an extension of feces and the sex organs. Therefore, buying sex from prostitutes is emotionally an extension of feces. In the Caucasian subconscious mind, the need for economic control over others is an extension of their sexuality, and sex is an extension of feces and urine. Historically, Caucasians used human feces in religious ceremonies. Ancient Greeks rubbed feces on their bodies to atone sin. Urine and feces were used during funeral ceremonies in rituals. Joshua used feces in the Bible's Zechariah 3:3-4, books such as Scatologic Rites of All Nations by John G. Burke. Caucasian customs with feces indicate this. A German harvest festival game involved farm laborers covering each other with feces and then throwing each other on a hill of feces. A harvest game in Netherlands and Zealand allowed farm workers to run and catch each other, then bury the caught person in dirt up to his waist, and then defecate in front of and on the caught victim's face. Historically, Caucasian criminals in the act of a crime would have a bowel movement on the floor at the crime scene. This was considered a spiritual way to prevent from being caught. If caught, the English prisoners were given bread and drinking water with chicken feces in it. The Feast of the Fools, which dates back to the Roman Saturnalia festival, used feces in the worship ceremony. The naked participants would eat sausage, sexual, erotic penis symbol at the church altar, paint their bodies, cross-dress, and throw feces on each other. The Caucasian historical figures involved in feces-related behaviors are plentiful. Robert Boyle, physicist, chemist, recommended human feces be used as an eye wash. King James I of England, Scotland, and Ireland constantly had bowel movements on himself rather than stop hunting. He was a homosexual and authorized the famous King James Version of the Bible. Martin Luther said he got his spiritual inspiration while having a bowel movement. Luther believed that Satan had an anus face and farted on him. Richard III of England decided to murder his nephew Tyrrell while having a bowel movement. It seems that Caucasians believed that feces had some psychic ability. Psychologist Carl Jung was obsessed with the idea that God sat on a toilet in heaven and had a big bowel movement which fell down to earth and broke the cathedral roof. This, he said, was God's way of telling him that his thoughts had no boundaries. Elizabeth Charlotte, in the court of Louis XIV, in a letter to her aunt Hanover, said that during the day ladies constantly had bowel movements on themselves and would wait until evening to clean off the day load of feces. Francois Voltaire, while dying in bed, ate his own bowel movement as a cure for his disease. Sigmund Freud had erotic sexual associations about his feces and his penis. He had constant constipation, probably due to his diet, and got sexual arousal from feces in his anus. The Caucasian nutrient-poor soil produces nutrient-poor vegetables, which cause diseases and mixed emotions about dirt. Added to this, they have disease-causing behaviors with feces. Their methods for wiping feces from their anus after bowel movements caused diseases. Ancient Romans kept a bucket of salt water with a sponge attached to a stick soaking in it. The sponge on a stick was used to wipe off the feces from a bowel movement. Seneca's Epistle number 70 told of the sponge on a stick ass wipers being used to choke people to death and to commit suicide. One of the members of the crowd that surrounded the Caucasians' Bibles, Jesus, at the crucifixion, poked a sponge on a stick in his face. Matthew 27:48 and Mark 36. The poor could not afford this luxury, so they used their bare left hand to wipe their behinds and the right hand for eating and shaking another's hand. The African slave in America's slave colonies used their hands and soil to wipe themselves. The Caucasians thought the Africans had a primitive need for cleanliness. In the Middle Ages, some ass wiper sticks were curved. This modern curved stick would confuse the wipers, and oftentimes they would mistakenly grab the wrong end of the stick. This has given rise to the expression, "I got the short end of the stick." This is a stick up. Stick it to him, etc. Before the stick, Caucasians such as Louis XIV used prostitutes and flea-infested wool or lace to wipe their behinds. Medieval monks used cloth rags and or pottery shards. In France, rich folks used grass and grew lawns for wiper use. Aristophanes wrote that the wealthy used onion leeks. In Europe and America, people and mailmen used newspapers, letters, and magazines. In 1907, crepe paper was invented to be used as toilet paper. In 1910, catalogs were popular as wipers. This caused the mail-order catalog company to switch to glossy, clay-coated paper to stop folks from ordering them for wipers. Most Caucasians and African slaves used leaves and corn cobs as wipers. The Caucasian relationship to their body functions is surrounded by disease-producing behaviors and social practices as a dubious nature. The hands, dirt, and grass remained as staple wipers, as diarrhea and constipation could cause scarce wiper items as well as extra wiper items. Enemas were a remedy for the constipating Caucasian diet. The Essence Gospel of Peace says that constipation was very common and enemas were the solution. In Germany, Dr. Johann Kampf said that enemas could cure all diseases as well as constipation. In 1932, French scientists found that ringing a bell while giving cats an enema caused them to have a bowel movement anytime a bell rang. They hoped to use the techniques for constipation and sell anti-constipation bells. Enemas can become just as addicting as a laxative. The colon gets weak and cannot function well enough to evacuate the feces due to excess enemas. An enema, colon cleanser, laxative formula, colonic irradiation, and laxative stool softener addicts can stay constipated for a week or more if he doesn't get an enema fix. Constipation causes flatulence, stomach gas, farts. Farts are a combination of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen and methane, and hydrogen sulfide. Farts have served a social function amongst Caucasians. Many Caucasian fairy tales and stories include character farts. There were many fart performers in literature, such as the Greek Aristophanes story, The Clouds. Farts were edited out of the English version of Chaucer's original Canterbury Tales, which had farts in it. Joseph Pujol of France, born June 1, 1857 in Marseille, was called Le Pétomane, the fartist. He gave fart performances in 1892 at the Moulin Rouge. He was one of the very famous fart performers who amused packed houses of people. In Britain, up until the 1800s, landholders had to appear before the feudal kings and had to perform a pagan ritual that included jumping up and farting in mid-air. It is part of the Caucasian belief system that bodily functions, such as farts and excrements, are symbols of life. Therefore, they can be used as sacrifices to appease spirit beasts. They believed good and bad spirits pass from one object into another object called sympathetic powers or magic. Emperor Claudius of Rome considered passing a law to allow farting at dinner. In France in the 1400s, prostitutes who had to cross a bridge to work had to fart while on the bridge as payment for its use. Crates, a Stoic philosopher, had a farting contest with the philosopher Metrocles. Adolf Hitler constantly farted. Consequently, he took small amounts of belladonna and strychnine in unsuccessful attempts to stop farting. The Bible mentions the Caucasian god of human feces, Baal Peor. Human as well as farts and feces sacrifices were made to Baal Peor. The African slaves were fearful of the wilds, uncivilized Dutch and other Caucasian because who were unbathed, cannibals, drunkards, violent, homosexual, had a grunt-sounding language, were illiterate, foul-smelling, flea and lice-infested, ate feces, and constantly farted. The Caucasians were a diseased, animalistic, organized mob that had feces and urine in their underwear, had heterosexual and homosexual activities in public, licked and spit on dinner tables, and were usually unbathed. The Caucasian custom of eating human feces and drinking urine appears in the October 1880 The Lancet and the Bible's Isaiah 36:16, Proverbs 5:15, Kings 18:31, and in John W. Armstrong's The Water of Life and Dr. C.P. Mithal's Urine Therapy. Caucasians urinating while having sexual intercourse is considered erotic. The Romans used urine as a mouthwash. Women in the city of Versailles urinated during church service. They would pass a urine bucket around to each other as a pagan ritual. In Scotland and France, after a Caucasian woman gave birth, her breasts were wiped with a man's urine. Stale urine was used as a cleanser called chamber lye. Urine was used as a skin softener, shampoo, and conditioner. Women used dog urine as an all-purpose beauty lotion. As an ancient European custom was to have married couples urinate on their wedding rings to spiritually protect the marriage from evil. The people who attended weddings were sprinkled with the bride's urine. In England and Ireland, the guest would drink the bride's urine. Ancient doctors such as Hippocrates, Paracelsus, and Galen recommended urine as medicine. They had a sympathetic belief that the urine's medical properties could be transferred to another person. They felt the same about the other excrements. The Roman Empire had public buildings designated for the wealthy to vomit in. It is part of the Caucasian sympathetic belief that the wealthy's vomit smell can carry the spirit of wealth. The poor would smell the rich vomit in order to transfer wealthy ability to them. Later in Caucasian history, vomiting became associated with witchcraft and spiritual possession by demons. Therefore, vomiting became disgusting along with other bodily functions. The scientists, religious men, and medical practitioners told people not to bathe. Feces, foul odor were associated with health animals. Saint Benedict, who founded the Benedictine monastic order, told people to stay dirty and to very seldom bathe. The early Caucasian Christians did not take baths, marry, drink spirits, or eat flesh. They practiced a life of misery in order to enter heaven. Hospitals in England and France were staffed with friars and other unbathed, dirty, foul-smelling, constipated, farting, rotten teeth, and bad breath people. The staff never changed underwear or outer clothing. A bath was considered a medicine and was not to be taken for cleanliness or pleasure. Dr. Russell wrote a book, a dissertation concerning the use of seawater in disease of the glands. He strongly advised against baths for cleanliness. Queen Elizabeth only took one bath a month. Caucasians generally urinated, had bowel movements, drank, and bathed in the same water. This was reported in New Bath Guide by Christopher Anstey. In stories such as Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, bathing was reported as not customary. Gulliver and the people called Yahoos stayed dirty and did not take baths and were considered foul, smelly, stupid, violent, had feces and urine in their underwear, and were wild. Today, if a Caucasian is having a wild, fun time, he will often holler, Yahoo! The Caucasian disdain for baths is reflected in phrases such as, you are in a stew, I am in a stew, etc. Stew is the old English word for bath. Since they kept themselves dirty and foul-smelling and did not want to bathe, they would refer to stew as negative. Their health was poor, and standards for health reflect it. Caucasians who lived in old Europe were infested with fleas. The custom of wearing fur coats comes from the abundance of fleas and lice. Fur was worn so that the fleas would get trapped in it instead of getting on the person. This did not work, but fur coats were believed to give relief from the insects. The medieval homes and early ghetto were filled with rats, fleas, human, dog, and rat feces, manure, urine, etc. Fleas and lice were common in beds. Caucasians looked for miracle cures for their living conditions. When the cures did not work, they resorted to wearing amulets. They had three types of lice: pedunculus captus, pedunculus curosus, and pthurus pubis. Fevers caused by being bitten by lice were treated with opium. The padding for shoulders in today's Caucasian clothing started as a way to trap fleas and lice and to keep warm. The padding usually acquired a foul odor and flea colonies, as revealed in pleasant and delightful dialogues by Minshew. Bedrooms had foul, funky odors, feces, urine, fumes, fleas, and lice. This added another dimension to the already pervert bedroom sexuality of Caucasians. The early Caucasians had sex in orgies. Fathers and mothers had sex with their children and animals. Their society had heterosexual and homosexual random rapings, orgy rapes, and gang rapes. Caucasian cannibalism adds another dimension to the social atmosphere, as the sick, elderly, young strangers were hunted and killed and eaten for food or used for sex orgy feast festivities. King James was hyperactive, an alcoholic, constantly drooled at the mouth, was a homosexual, and never bathed except for washing his fingertips before eating. He would get involved in homosexual activities in public and during meal times. Danish King Christian IV visited England in 1606, got involved in heterosexual and homosexual orgies during feasts. Caucasians gained sexual arousal from eating and licking feces. This was a type of coprophilia, erotic love of filth. In Elizabethan England, sex partners would get sexually aroused by exchanging love apples. A love apple is a peeled apple rubbed with foul odors of underarm sweat. Love apples were carried around by sex partners and sniffed as an aphrodisiac. Students giving apples to a teacher is a leftover fragment of this sex ritual. In a letter written by Napoleon, he requested that Josephine not take a bath for 2 weeks so that they could have erotic sex. James Joyce, in a letter to his wife Nora, wrote that he got aroused from her farting in his face. The sight of feces stains in her underwear and seeing her feces come out of her anus. The combinations of filth and odors were a delight to the Caucasians. The bacteria on the skin produces a musky odor, goat-like smell, and the stale urine fumes. Funky odors are sexually arousing for pagan and contemporary Caucasians. The body odors are related to the body's sweat, sex organs, urine, and feces. Feces is emotionally connected to dirt with its pagan rituals and sexual connotations mixed into the subconscious mind of the Caucasian. Caucasians currently use many of their pagan rituals and ceremonies and still have the same behaviors and thoughts of their ancestors. Many pagan rituals are used in Greek fraternities, sororities, secret societies, Masonic orders, religious initiations, social gatherings, sexual activities, and lynchings. They were also used by Caucasians on African slaves. Chapter 6. Once Upon a Time. Our people must learn to make the analysis of what is good and healthy. Del Jones. Harmful effects of white fairy tales on black children. Caucasian fairy tales, children's stories, were written by Caucasians for Caucasians. The purpose of the fairy tales is to emotionally attach the child to the culture. Fairy tales program the child with Caucasian logic, morals, ethics, social and sexual behaviors, and violence. Once the child is psychologically hardwired, a new program will be hard to understand, difficult to accept, be questioned, and given less respect and distorted. The first program will be the norm standard and used to understand and measure the validity of African culture. The fairy tales are a way to program the black child into having a white consciousness and subconsciousness. They season the child into a Caucasian mindset. Fairy tales are basically ancient Greek and Roman myths in which the characters have English and German names. The black child learns the Caucasian worldview, rituals, ceremonies, rewards, punishments, how to act and react, and begins to distort and modify their African character logic so that it will fit into a Caucasian personality. Thus, she gradually becomes a dysfunctional personality. The fairy tales are written oral stories that were originally told about almost primitive Caucasian clans and tribes. Their folk writers, lore scientists, philologists, mythologists who collected various Caucasian fairy tales and put them in books. Jacob Ludwig Grimm and Wilhelm Karl Grimm collected stories that barbaric clans told to each other and compiled the book Grimm's Fairy Tales. Basil compiled various primitive tribes' stories and called them Mother Goose, which was transliterated by Charles Perrault, and these stories were revised, modified, and changed and put into English in 1729. The Three Bears by Robert Southey is another pagan Caucasian story that engineers the black children's mind and behavior. The stories teach the child how to manipulate others, to steal, be disobedient, how to dream, be superstitious, do rituals, to value winning above morality, used in appropriate parenting skills, to be liars, to want and eat junk food and sweets, that killing animals is sport, and to run away from home. The fairy tales have a story pattern, and the child learns to act out his/her life according to the life of the fairy tale. If you have ever wondered why some adults act like they are immature or don't want to grow up and be responsible, look at the fairy tales. This type of dysfunctional adult has the Peter Pan syndrome or the Alice in Wonderland syndrome. Never, never land. The pattern of the stories are: 1. Fall of character. Character has a problem that has caused a change and or failure in their life. 2. Atonement. Character seeks a solution to the problem and has obstacles to overcome or an enemy to defeat. 3. Need supernatural, miracle. Character seeks special person or item, magic, money, good fairy or witch, and or magic to become happy, successful, rich, and normal. The fairy tales have common ingredients such as: single women have children. Magic will save you. Poor people, poor elves, live to serve the rich. Have sex with someone if they dress good. Married couples are miserable, childless. Women want men for their money. Stay in bad relationships. No extended families. Black is evil. White is good. God does not exist for happy people. Spirits are evil. Sex symbolism. Evil is successful without magic and goodness. Good needs magic to be successful. Marry a stranger for money, not character. Candy, cake, and sweets are rewards and make you happy. Meat eating is normal. Man's deceased first wife is resurrected as evil stepmother. Sacrifice children for wealth. Men are sexually wolves. Child abuse is normal. Poor parenting skills are normal. Thieves and liars are successful. Ancestors are not part of the family. Straight hair and Caucasian facial features are beautiful. Beautiful people are good and ugly people are evil. Women are not interested in sex. Men always want sex because women have charm and beauty. Dysfunctional families are normal. Violence is normal. No music, singing, dancing, or elderly relatives. Fairy tales use a story pattern called the chase. In the chase, the character is chasing after success or the perfect life. The cartoons such as The Road Runner and Wile E. Coyote, Tom and Jerry, Flintstones, Bugs Bunny, Woody the Woodpecker, Scooby-Doo, Butthead, and Beavis and Daffy Duck use the chase, while Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man focus on a prophet who will save you. Chase themes are in movies such as Men in Black, Star Wars, Tarzan, Titanic, Malcolm X, and The Wild Wild West. The chase theme is the format for talk shows, music videos, professional wrestling, soap operas, and commercials such as Dave of Wendy's fast food restaurant, Ronald McDonald, and breakfast cereal commercials. The chase has a character that chases after a solution by overcoming an obstacle with the help of the talk show host, clown, character, or hero. The chase is fairy tale based. The breakfast and fast food commercials use clowns and animated characters which appeal to infantilism. Plus, they emotionally take you down memory lane and satisfy the need to be nurtured or escape adult life. This causes consumers to emotionally live a fantasy life of happiness with the animated characters, food, sex, and clowns. Fairy tales are a propaganda and used in a military logic fashion to reinforce and maintain white supremacy. The Caucasian civilization spends more dollars on media than on its military. The military maintains its power and attacks those who are classified by them as an enemy or operating against their peaceful economic interest. However, the new weapon of the Caucasians is fairy tale propaganda, which is used to seize the mind of black children. Caucasians spend 3 to 4 times more money on the media of television shows, commercials, and movies that use exclusively fairy tale themes. They invade Africa and other countries and the mind with a fairy tale type media, and then the military comes to the country to complete the takeover. Media is the new military of Caucasians, an examination of the overt and hidden messages communicated to black children in a few fairy tales. Children's stories will reveal their true effect on the mind. The African in American, and diaspora Africans have African-centered children stories. Teach the child ma'at, the real from the unreal, right from wrong, respect. They teach respect for the privilege to love God and the importance of family and the respect for ancestors and Mother Earth. The stories present a variety of problems and the African ma'at solution. The African children stories usually have major themes. 1. A message gets changed and a character has to seek the true message. 2. Rebirth of a character teaches various solutions of a problem. 3. A mixture of 1 and 2. 4. The use of ma'at will solve problems. An African ethnic group called the Hottentots has many stories. One story is about the moon, giving a message to a rabbit to tell Adam and Eve. The rabbit forgets the correct message and tells them a lie. The moon learns of the error and throws a stick at the rabbit and splits his lip. Therefore, the child is told not to seek wisdom from those who lie. The Maasai of Botswana, Kalahari Desert and southern Rhodesia have children's stories. In one story, a turtle and rabbit are told to tell man he will live forever. The fast-moving rabbit runs to man and reaches him before the turtle. The rabbit, with his bad memory, forgets part of the message and tells man a lie instead of the truth. The turtle, with the correct message, gets to man after the rabbit. This caused man to be doomed to solve his earthly problems by himself. Basically, the African stories and Greek myths and Roman myths are versions of the series of Egyptian mythological stories about the children Osiris and Seth, who are brothers, and their sisters Isis and Nephthys. It is a long story about how and why these brothers and sisters maintain Ma'at, family values, and godly values in the face of negative forces outside and inside the family. It also contains the African spirituality construct. The African-American Carolina Sea Island Upotos of the Congo and Galas of East Africa have stories about a bird bringing mortal life and immortal life to man. The stories are built upon the Egyptian Osirian stories. African stories have a common connection, and that is to demonstrate what is Ma'at and how to use Ma'at to be spiritualized with God. They are designed to connect African children to African culture. The Caucasian stories are totally different and truly harmful psychologically and emotionally. They addict children to white, sugary sweets, and they do not reflect a godly relationship with one's soul. For example, in Little Red Riding Hood, her mother abuses her by sending her into the woods where wild, man-eating wolves live. Little Red Riding Hood is openly disobedient to her mother when she goes off the trail which her mother told her to stay on. Little Red Riding Hood talks to the wolf, a total stranger, and tells him she is going to her sick grandmother's house. She should not talk to strangers, but does. She wears a red hood, and the hood represents hiding something and deceit. Red in Caucasian culture means fertile, sexually active. This is why Caucasian women wear red lipstick, red nail polish, red underwear, red shoes. Areas of prostitution in cities work in areas that are called red light districts, etc. The grandmother obviously is senile as she leaves the door to her house open when she knows wild wolves roam around her house. The grandmother cannot distinguish a wolf's voice from that of Little Red Riding Hood. Then, when Little Red Riding Hood arrives at her grandmother's with a basket of food and sweets and a bottle of wine, she cannot recognize a wolf from her grandmother. The story does not seem to make sense to the conscious mind because it is aimed at the subconscious mind. Subconsciously, the wolf is symbolic of men. Men are wolves that seek sex. Men are dogs and want to rape virgin young girls. Girls want a man to be virile and a sex stud wolf. However, when they get a macho man, they are insulted and call him a dog. If a man is kind and gentle like a sheep, then he is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Men are deceitful. If a man whistles at an attractive lady, then he is acting like a wolf. It's a wolf's whistle. Little Red Riding Hood gets in bed with the wolf. A hunter appears in the story with a rifle. The rifle is symbolically a man's penis. This means that a man's penis will save Little Red Riding Hood from the wolf. Therefore, the idea is promoted that the next man is always better than the last man that the lady was in a sexual relationship with. The wolf dresses up like a drag queen to protect his virginity from hot Little Red Riding Hood. The hunter impregnates the drag queen, and the wolf drag queen has rocks. The hunter skins the wolf and takes his fur. Skinning or scalping people, such as the American Indians, symbolically means that their soul is stolen because of an evil woman. After the murder of the wolf, the grandmother gets drunk. The wine bottle is symbolically a penis that gives the grandmother her true spirit. The story programs black boys to be wolves and black girls to be in conflict with their mothers. It can subconsciously cause girls to become sex hunters of the penis in order to save themselves from the evilness of being a woman with a vagina. The story Cinderella has many mixed messages and hidden themes. It suggests that poor people can be saved from poverty by the rich, money, expensive clothes, shoes, magic, sex, and that women are naturally dirty, etc. Cinderella is a story about child abuse. A father is so in love with his wife's sexuality that he lets her abuse his child. The woman's vagina will get her anything because Cinderella can only be saved from this parental abuse by being dressed in the latest expensive clothes in order to sell her sexuality. This allows her to marry a man who dresses nice. The personality and character development of the prince is never an issue. Therefore, if a man dresses nice and has money, he can have sex with women. This fairy godmother did not try to correct her father's behavior or put the mother and father in marriage counseling. The story projects the idea that being wealthy will save you from abuse and solve your problems. The story makes ugly people evil with dark hair. The prince picks a wife as she is a commodity. Women are valued the same as a slave, horse, or ornament. Women are sex candy for men. Women cannot truly trust other women. The stepmother and daughters ask for forgiveness for being abusive to Cinderella. It is denied, which means people should be punished for behavior. This justifies prisons and prisoners. The children's stories in poem form are harmful. For example, the poem Pussy Willow, aside from causing the women's vagina to be called pussy, has other hidden meanings. Pussy Willow. Verse. Pussy Willow wakened from her nap. Meaning, the vagina is ready for sex, barren pre-puberty from her winter nap. Verse. From the frolic spring breeze on her door would tap. Meaning, sexual intercourse opens her legs so that men can have sex. Verse, Mistress Pussy Willow opened wide her door. Meaning, pussy is female equals vagina open the legs and door of vagina. Verse, Good morning, Pussy Willow. Welcome to you, dear. Meaning, men naturally have an erection in the morning which can greet the vagina. Verse, Pussy came to town in a hood of silver gray and a coat of brown. Meaning, pussy comes to town for sexual action, pussy with hair. Verse, Spring is coming, Pussy Willow out. Meaning, men will ejaculate in a vagina that is out the panties, the penis will enter. Hickory Dickory Dock. Verse, Hick, meaning unsophisticated, wild, a sexual petting bruise. Verse, Dick, meaning driver's seat drives it, penis makes sex happen, dick is a penis, picker equals penis. Verse, Dock, meaning short part of a tail, the tail is a penis, loads are left on this area of a pier, loads of semen left in vagina. Verse, The mouse ran up the clock, meaning mouse is symbolically a penis, it has a long tail, the clock is a vagina. Verse, The clock struck 1, meaning 1 o'clock is the hands of clock straight up, equals erected penis struck is intercourse, stroking the vagina. Verse, And down he ran, Hickory Dickory Dock, meaning ejaculation penis became flaccid, equals erection goes down. The earlier you condition a black child's mind with a fairy tale program, the better. The earlier the stories are told, the more tightly bound the emotional, physical image and behaviors of the characters are imprinted on the mind. The more the stories are repeated, the stronger the impression. The adult storyteller's voice quality, inflection, voice tone, tension, and facial expressions wrap the child into the fairy tale so completely that they will mimic the voice tones associated with anger, sex, joy, stealing, lies, and behavior of fairy tale characters all their lives. The fairy tales are hardwired to the electrical circuit of the child, and any aggressive attempt to free the child from the Caucasian ideals further bonds them to it. The fairy tales sell them stocks in Caucasian culture that make them bond to the Caucasian. Fairy tale jingles and songs are repeatedly hummed and sung by black children, which makes a negative psychological impression and gives them an emotionally soothing effect. Along with the effect comes the Caucasian mindset. The child becomes possessed by the spirit of Europeans. They became alienated from African culture and aliens. Aliens only serve aliens. The child is created into an Afro-European black skin, white mind. The Caucasian fairy tales and children's poems program the future behavior of the child. Consequently, black women will meet black men who are either sex hunters, wolves, Prince Charmings, Peter Pan, men that think they possess magic words, men that allow themselves to be dominated, homosexuals, etc. Conversely, black men will meet black women who are Cinderellas, look for Prince Charmings, princess, submissive, want to rescue the man from childishness and raise them, gold diggers, or subconsciously choose to be a single female parent that has had a series of bad relationships that have left her with children etc. The fairy tale programmed adults will follow the fairy tale script to its conclusion. The unreal fairy tale story and their real life story become one and the same. They dress for sexual intercourse like fairy tale characters. The women may wear red and the men may wear animal type design underwear. This fairy tale program influences their sexual positions and erotic, sexually arousing areas of the body. This fairy tale program influences their sexual positions and erotic, sexually arousing areas of the body. Fairy tales consistently show pictures of white sugary sweets, talk about sweets, and use sweets to reward good behavior. The child is programmed to associate white sugar with fun, happiness, family, sex, and love. White sugar, candy, cookies, pies, and cakes are in numerous stories such as Hansel and Gretel, Christmas, Halloween, and Thanksgiving stories. The gingerbread boy, etc. Sugar addiction is created by the stories. The gingerbread boy, etc. Sugar addiction is created by the stories. The only solution to the black folks having fairy tale syndrome is not to tell Caucasian fairy tales to black children. Caucasians' fairy tales come from a dysfunctional mind created by a dysfunctional culture and have dysfunctional characters, families, behaviors, and themes. They will in some way cause an aspect of the child's mind and life to be dysfunctional. Once upon a time, black folks only told African stories to African children. Now is the time to return back to that once upon a time so that we can save our children in this time.
Over time, I've been building my castle of love, just for two. Though you never knew you were my reason, I've gone much too far for you now to say that I've got to throw my castle away over dreams. I have bit out of perfect come true.
Glorious times. Glorious times. Overjoyed. Overjoyed. We are done with the nutritional destruction of black people. Worst book ever. Woo! I'm just grateful to be done. I cannot fully articulate how much I have despised reading this book. In so many ways, time and energy is valuable. I have said that repeatedly. I'll say it again. Hey, if you are not getting constructive information from the cows, do not listen. We do not have time to waste. The system of white supremacy racism is serious. We should be on our P's and Q's getting information to solve this problem immediately. This book, and particularly with the reason that we were reading it, we had someone who called in who said, you know, I'm concerned. I feel like the way that you talked about this book, it might discourage people from wanting to invest time in reading it. If that is the result of this program, or people reading or, you know, hearing my thoughts about it, spectacular, because I think it would be a waste of time for most victims of racism, particularly black people, to read this book. There are much better books, much better investments of time where you could get constructive information. And especially with what's happening right now, COVID-19, racism every day, health, racism every day, every day. Last, 3-4 months, health, racism every day, obesity, health, racism every day. You have a book about racism and health. We read it, and it's a waste of time? How is that? Like, what in the world? Like, anybody, victim of racism, I would say Negro because that's what's on the cover of the book, but any victim of racism who after reading this book say, hey, I got enough information that I think I would help keep myself I would help to keep from eating myself to death, because that's what it says on the cover. Mr. and Mrs. Negro, they ate themselves to death. Anybody, you feel like I got enough information from this book. I took down notes, and I feel, hey, this changed the way that I'm going to eat, how I'm going to shop, my snack patterns, all of that. Let us know. I would love to hear it. I cannot say that at all. Spectacular disappointment. There are better books. Whew. Even to go back, that's for sure. If anybody got that sort of information from this book, share. Also, if you heard the introduction, Dr. Afrika's visit in 2011, I had not read this book at that time. It sounded like he said Africa, called it a country, the country of Africa. I said he could have just misspoke, because that happens to me. That happens to the best of us. President Obama, everybody, you misspeak or what have you. He was about to exit the broadcast, so that totally could have been it. The only reason that I'm bringing it up is because I have said a number of times in reading this book that, man, he is talking about Africa as though it is one country as opposed to a continent with like billions of people. Like, are they all eating the same thing? Are they all doing the same thing? Like, really? Really? From Ethiopia to South Africa? Really? They're all doing the same thing? I said that a number of times throughout reading this book. That was why it stood out. Like, if I hadn't said that, if I hadn't been saying that throughout the text, I would have said, oh, yeah, he probably misspoke and, whatever. He's been to the continent, he knows, blah, blah, blah. But, man, I did say that a number of times throughout the book. And then, anywho, if you heard that, just to verify, he did say Africa country. And last thing I'll say, I'll get to folks who have commentary to dial in. We don't even have a second audio segment today. We are done, over frickin' joyed. Number is 605-313-5164. The code 564943 #. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The last thing, I had a lot of folks wrote in, so I'm going to get all of their comments in for folks who wrote in, and then if folks have anything to share. But the other thing I wanted to get in, Dr. Afrika, when Justice asked how long do you think it'll take to solve this problem, and he said, maybe another 1,000, 2,000 years. I think the people who are most to blame for that, racist man, racist woman. You see that on display right now. Didn't you just see Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi out? I think that's Senator. I think it's Senator Nancy Pelosi. Senator Nancy Pelosi out with the kente cloth on. Didn't she do the Kaepernick knee this week for George Floyd? She had been waiting for just the right black male to be shot down and burst out her kente cloth and do the Kaepernick knee and get everybody to come do it at the U.S. Capitol building. Whites are most to blame for the confusion. Also, in a component of that, I think this sort of nonsense. Oh, it is Congressman. I said it correct the first time. Congressman Nancy Pelosi. Said it right the first time. Anyway, I do think a part of that confusion, I think this sort of thing. We got to be honest about what we're dealing with, direct about the problem. We cannot do a whole lot of fantasizing about Africa and the continent and what black people did 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Like, that is going to make it take a lot more time. If we're going to sit around and do all of that now, that's the sort of thing, like when the person said, this is not a book that you read in COVID-19. This, in my opinion, is a type of book you can read once white supremacy has been replaced. Then, if you want to read all the books and, wow, look at black people. We're killing it back 2,000 years ago. Like, look at this. They were done. Great. Fine. Sit up, do that for years. Have whole, book clubs and do all that forever. But right now, man, it should be sense of urgency. Like, we cannot have this take 1,000 years to get this problem solved. Like, are we going to have 1,000 years of George Floyd's? Breonna Taylor's? The number is 605-313-5164. The code 564943 #. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. And the thing that stood out is I used to remember Dr. Welsing, because we would ask her. I know Justice asked Dr. Welsing, how long? And she said, man, we can get this thing done quickly. like in a matter of, 2-3 years if we get it together. She would talk about the exact same thing. We are the parent people on the planet. We built the pyramids and all of this, and with mystery science that he talked about, like we did all of this. Yes, we can get this problem solved, and quickly. That was what Dr. Welsing believed. If black people are capable of anti-gravitational travel that Dr. Afrika wrote about in this book, if we're capable of all of these things, why would it take us 2,000 years to solve this problem? Say it again. Things like this, books like this, where there's a lack of logic, just sitting around and black people are spectacular and the continent's spectacular, that would slow things down. That would slow things down. I feel like we could have had a much more efficient use of time and energy over the last 2 months. I'm so happy that's done. Woo! The number is 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. All done. If you have concluding comments, like I said, if we got anybody, man, Gus, you are a big-time nutritional Uncle Tom. You and Whitney Houston. Because I got my whole diet together after reading this book, not talking to Dr. Afrika, not hanging out with him, not doing lectures. All of that is spectacular, and kudos to everybody who took advantage and was able to do that while he was with us in physical form. But from reading this book, I got my diet together. I don't know what you're talking about. This was super informative and helped me. Let's hear that in detail. But if folks have thoughts concluding on the text, feel free to share. Woo! Man, oh man. Overjoyed. Overjoyed. Overjoyed.
Greetings.
Retired firefighter in Florida. Yes, sir.
Yes. As far as the reading of the book, I find it very, very, very difficult for anyone to transform their way of eating just by this book alone. Even on a scientific, any type of way, in a scientific way, I find it almost impossible that you can get there. I mean, there's no scientific input as far as different food sources, meal plans, or anything. I'm not an expert on it, but meal plans, suggestions for a daily or weekly a plan of eating. It's nothing like that at all. It's like I've been saying the whole time, because I was involved into a lot of this, the rhetoric of the 1980s and 1990s, which it was designed to have a feel-good, stick-it-to-whitey, feel-good effect. I mean, it had somewhat what I would identify as a street logic. They stuck it to us. So now it's time for us to stick it to them. And to stick it means to name call or disparage, that on a surface type of way. And you will walk out of that lecture, kind of like in a surface way, feeling good. That sort of thing. But I mean, and from your reading tonight, it would make one wonder. Well, where did white people have time to mistreat us, to subject us? Where would they have time to do it? If they do all of this stupidity and folly with themselves, where would they have time to subject us? So it leaves something to be desired, as the saying goes. with logic when it comes in science, which is what we definitely need, and to on a ending part, I'm perceiving, I don't know for sure on what I'm about to say now, I'm perceiving that he is stating that the answer is ma'at. That just boggles my mind. Just boggles my mind as far as logic is concerned. You know, I mean, to repeat something that was overcame. You know, now it may have been a form of what's the word? It may have been a form of some kind of code, but it was one that was overturned. It was one that was overturned, and I don't think even because I've studied that, and even with the Ma'at code, it was not earmarked and based on countering the global system of racism, white supremacy, and so I wouldn't suggest to anyone that is the best possible weapon that we can use to overturn and or neutralize the system of racist white supremacy. It's not logical. It's not logical. I do accept that the doctor has some knowledge of things, but I would have suggested, my suggestion would have been to kind of like focus on one thing at a time. And in this case, you know, talk about nutrition and what is incorrect and what is correct in the most scientific and simplest way as possible for non-white people. And that's my report on this book. Thank you.
Talk about it. Simple, practical, applicable information that black people can use to help make corrective changes, life-saving, really, that's what we're talking about, life-saving changes.
Yes, sir.
In their diet. That's all we need. Stay focused. Let's see. There are people that wrote in, so I'm going to sprinkle those in as I get callers too. So real quickly, we had one caller. She wrote in, vegan RD. Oh, look at that. She says, I was reading the introduction to the Assata Shakur autobiography, which we read in the book club. I think some of the folks on the line with us were here for that too. And I found that they mentioned Black Liberation Army. They sure do. On February 12, 1973, an article called Target Blue by Robert Daly was published in a New York magazine. In the article, Black Liberation Army was referred as groups like the Black Panthers and other groups fighting for justice for black people. The article also described these groups as cop killers, bank robbers, and trying to overtake the U.S. government. This could be who Dr. Afrika was referring to in his book. Thought this was interesting. Very best, Vegan RD. So I did write her back, and hey, we read Assata, 2015. Very familiar, Black Liberation Army. I thought of that as well. Maybe that's who he's talking about. But if we were comparing this group, where you have to go back in the catacombs and find an article from 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 50 years ago, say, oh yeah, they did exist, yes, as opposed to the United States military, which is bombing and pillaging as we speak, flexing their military might. You cannot tell me that these have a similar organizational structure for a book published in 1990. That's what I mean about logic. That's what I mean. That type of thing, endorsing that sort of nonsense, illogic, is why it could take 2,000 years. It might take 1,000 years. Black Liberation, African Liberation Army? What are you talking about? That doesn't even exist. Let's go in the wrong way for 1,000 years. Let's get it together. other folks who dialed in that we missed totally.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Bay Area Mom.
Thank you. Greetings to you and the other people on the line. So this is the only part of the book that I didn't get anxiety on. I think that's what I feel when I hear the book. I get this feeling in my stomach. I'm not stating that the information, even though it's scattered, it's not, you can't use it. It just gave me I felt some kind of way when I would hear you read what he wrote. And this time, I didn't have any butterflies or any of that weird feeling in my stomach. But what I did get out of that end of the book was how messed up I am from those children's books, because I was very into all of that madness, all of the white stories. And, yes, so I'm all damaged. And that this explains why those doggone stories and those sweet treats and fatty snacks that I love to read about. I live by the golden books and all those other things. Feel some kind of way about my mom, or for my mom, because I read a lot of that stuff. So if this is the case, then that kind of helps me understand why I super love sugary sweets. And I consume so much sugar. Oh, I don't know what. I'm going to have to detox. And I'm going to go over the very end of the book again so I can write down all of the horrible stories, especially with all the sex play in the Red Riding Hood and all that. I didn't look at it like that as a child, but as an adult. So my children are grown now. I don't think I did a lot of brain damage to them with those stories and books, particularly my son. We had television a lot, so I think my daughter may have consumed a lot of television. So, yeah, it explained a lot. At the end of the chapter, it helped me a lot. So that part of the book is going to change my eating habits. And thank you, Dr. Afrika. And I'm going to mute my line.
Bay Area Mom. Whoopee. We have Dr. Abner. We did actually talk about fairy tales, although he did not talk about food and fairy tales. He just talked about the sex and violence aspect of fairy tales when he was on the program. In fact, we didn't really talk very much about food at all, which is odd because Justice used to ask quite a few questions about food because she's also vegan. I was not vegan at the time, but she was, and she would ask about food. But that didn't really, well, I guess a couple of listeners did, but it wasn't the meat of the conversation. But we did talk about fairy tales. If you go back 2011, I uploaded it. Should be available. And it could be the anxiety. Much obliged for sharing, Bay Area Mom. I guess, anxiety or uneasiness that you were feeling with the information that you said throughout the book, where you said you felt like it might have been at times a bit scattered, maybe, but of value. It could have been because I was disgusted with the book. That was what the caller said previously. That could have been, or I don't know. Do you have a theory as to why you were feeling the way you were during the book? Do you have a theory behind what was motivating your feelings?
I know what it was, and it wasn't your view of the book. That's your view. That book came out in the 80s. I think it was because all of the foods that he was naming and the way he was stating it, I either eat them or have eaten them, and I have to figure out how to stop. But when he's grinding it with all the different words, it's like, oh my God. And I'm just thinking of all the damage maybe that I've done to myself by consuming all these yummy yums that are not for me. So I kind of felt that's what it was. Oh, anything chicken. It's like, oh my God, chicken. It's so bad. So it was just because I've eaten so much of all the no-no food. It had nothing to do with your view on this scattered book. I'll mute my book.
Thank you kindly for answering. They do say it's good to ask as opposed to making assumptions. Yep. Dr. Welsing, the grandsister, she used to always say, we be patient, we learn, and then we can do better. Like, yes, I will try to put the chicken down and get some, alternatives. And they do have, 2020, and you're in California, oh my gosh, it is so easy, easy. They have so many they have cauliflower chicken. That's on my Facebook page. I made that, where you can do buffalo chicken wings, where you can use cauliflower instead. They are amazing. They taste, I don't know. It's been a while since I've had chicken, so I won't say they taste exactly the same, but they are very good, and they remind me a lot of fried chicken, unless my taste memory is off. But they have the products that you can buy in the store, they have plant-based fish, plant-based crispy chicken, like the crispy chicken sandwiches and such that you can get, burgers, obviously, all kinds of stuff. And you're in the Bay, so I mean, my gosh, all the farmers markets, yeah, super. I think it would just be a matter of, and all kinds of YouTube videos and stuff where they can show you how to make all of these meals. That's why I post lots of pictures on my Facebook page, of different things that you can make that are really, really delicious, really, really taste good, that, are really easy to make, plant-based and healthy. That's the sort of information that I think would be helpful, just in general for Black people. These are things that are very harmful, like chicken and dairy products and blah, blah, blah. White sugar, he was talking about a lot in the books. All things he mentioned in the book. Sodas, he talked about that. These are things that are harmful. This is the harmful effect that they can have on your body, and these are healthy replacements and things that you can eat and why you should eat them. That's, it's not rocket science, But yeah, it should be super easy. Dr. Ruby Lathan, she's come on a number of times. I think she has a lot of great information that can be helpful in making that transition. Her website, she has recipes and such, and I try to post a lot of different recipes and things that I make that are pretty easy to make sometimes, delicious, all about eating yummy, healthy foods. But yeah, it's just a matter of realizing now and taking the time to make a change. Let's see. Other folks, if you have comments that you want to get in, feel free. I'll share. Actually, I'll read some of the other emails because we had quite a few. So, an investor wrote in. Number 1, the untold Caucasian history, dirt, fart, feces, fun, sex. I found this section was disturbing, to say the least. The technical terms for these obsessions are scatology. I said it right. Scatology, preoccupation with excrement, scatological, sexual interest with excrement, e.g. scatological literature or movies, The Human Centipede 2010. Pause. So the C.O.W.S was in existence in 2010. Gus T. Renegade has seen The Human Centipede, and we actually, I can't say we, hopefully you haven't seen it, but I talked about it on the program. I would have to think a little while to recall exactly why that was mentioned, but I do know the context. I was with a victim of racism, a non-black, non-white victim of racism, and he had either white friends or white classmates or colleagues or whatever the situation was, but I was with him and he had to go meet these people briefly. And so we're talking to his white pal, whatever it is, colleague. So we're talking to them, and this white fella is talking about movies that he's just seen. He says, "Oh yeah, Human Centipede. Wow, that's so crazy." Blah, 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 blah. And I generally try to pay attention if I'm talking to somebody that I suspect is a racist. I'll try to pay attention if they mention a film, just, studying white people and what their interests are and what have you. Wow. It's exactly what you heard in this chapter. I will not even go into detail. There's racism in it also, but wow, we talked about it. It's in the archives. If I can remember the exact context of why that was brought up in 2010, we were here. Continuing, I wonder if the practice of mooning, burying the male buttocks in public, should be included with this obsession. I have observed the practice of mooning by young white males, for example, sticking their buttocks out of school bus windows, particularly during the 1960s and 70s. Mooning has also been depicted in countless movies, including Braveheart. I suspect the practice has been curtailed during recent years because of concerns that the perpetrator could be charged with pedophilia if young children are around. 2. The section on harmful effects of white fairy tales on black children was interesting. I will look at these stories differently in the future. Unlike the majority of texts in the book club, I doubt I will be making reference to Nutricide in the future. Looking forward to the next reading. Me too. Ick. Unpleasant. Let's see. Do I want to get in? Get in. One more from a listener, and then I'll hear if folks have written in. Let's see. Oh, I don't even want to read this one. Like, man, I don't want to read this one. Yeah, I don't want to read. All they say, your critique of Nutricide is spot on. It's all over the place. I didn't want to read it because, I said from the beginning, I'm very aware Dr. Afrika just passed in March of this year. That was what part of, hey, he just passed. We should, recognize and read this book. But the super motivator as to right now while we're reading this was COVID-19, health. Let's try to get information to help us improve our diet. And man, it is not fun at all to have to be Gus T. Renegade and sit up for a black person who talked about racism and did lectures with Mr. Fuller and Dr. Welsing and references their books in his text, to have to sit here and be like, wow, this book is trash. Like, that is not fun at all. And that's the second time, gee whiz, when Pamela Evans Harris passed. But yeah, we will not be doing this again. Not reading any more books when somebody passes away. That will see if we can get us out of this pattern. But much obliged for writing in. Think we had some other folks who wrote in also. See if I can make sure we get in the other folks who wrote in. Let's see. Oh, they're recommending books. So we already have our books recommended. Lots of suggestions for constructive text. Somebody even suggested Neil Postman. Love amusing ourselves to death. That is a great book. We'll have to read that at some point. But anyway, I'll get to my critiques and then double check, make sure we didn't miss anybody. Not critiques per se, but just thoughts from this week. So mostly we were on chapter 6. We had a little bit from chapter 5, but mostly on chapter 6 with the fairy tales and such. The untold Caucasian history, dirt, fart, feces, fun, and sex. All of that is like the end of chapter 5. All of that is, I guess interesting. I'm not disputing it. I have seen The Human Centipede. Not disputing it at all. I will say, though, again, I thought the focus of this book was, us improving our diet, not talking about how ignorant and filthy and disgusting white people are. Like, there are books that address this, like separate book. I think I've said that a lot throughout this text. Like, this, it's kind of all over the place. Like, if it could just be a bit more focused, it would have been a lot more constructive. And the other thing is that he took up time at the beginning of the book in the foreword saying that he doesn't include references and blah 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 for the most part. He does have a few sections for the Negro on the plantation. He does have a few references. So, for the anti-gravitational time travel, is no reference. For the African Liberation Army, is no reference. When he says don't consume nightshades, it's no references. All of this is no additional supporting details. We get to dirt, fart, feces, and fun. We got a page and a half of references. I love references. I'm never upset about references. I'm just saying, why? In a book, here lies Mr. and Mrs. Negro. They ate themselves to death. Why is it a page and a half of references for selected readings for fart, feces, fun, and sex But that is nowhere in the book when you start talking about herbs and which vegetables to eat, which fruits to eat, food combinations. Nowhere in the book is there that sort of reference section when we're talking about diet. Why is that? I thought that was what the focus of the book is. That's part of why this is the worst book ever. Many, many reasons. But that's a big one. Like, what the... Focus. What is this book about? Like, don't deceive me. Like, if this book is just going to be like your scattered opinions on a whole lot of things, then the title should reflect that. Then I would have had different expectations about a book. This kind of Nutricide, the nutritional destruction of the black race. Here lies Mr. and Mrs. Negro. They ate themselves to death. That would kind of make me think that this is going to be talking about food and probably name-calling black people. The name-calling black people is there. Talking about food is kind of hit or miss. Let's see. Then he gets to chapter 6. We talked about the fairy tales, and he does connect that to food. And that does. I mean, the gingerbread man and all of them. They got some specific for Christmas. Goldilocks. I don't know what she's going to. It's porridge. I don't know what. I'm not a porridge fan, so I guess they didn't get me with that one. But they do have a lot of sweets and gumdrops and, confectionery items. In those fairy tales, in addition to the, conditioning in terms of beauty and all of that. Like I said, we talked about that when he was on the program in 2011. Didn't even talk about the connection to food. We talked about violence and, how you think about whites, not thinking about them as racists and, all the rest of it. Very important information. But, again, I thought this was supposed to be about food. Like, it does, eventually get to the sugar part, but a lot of this is not connected to that at all. A lot of this is off on, sugar. And then we come back to the African romanticizing, the greatness of the continent. Now, this is another one where I had to pause and say, now, okay, wait a minute. So are they not telling these fairy tales on the continent? Are they? Are they not? Do we think Cinderella and the Three Bears and Goldilocks, is that going down on the continent? Is that what's responsible for, like, Rwanda, 1990? Were they doing all of that at that time, 1980s or what have you? Because I'm not sure. We talked about that before. I don't think they're eating the exact same foods as we are. I'm not sure. Like, at the time that this book was published, early 1990s, I don't know. I would suspect you probably would have parts on the continent where they are not doing European fairy tales. They are probably doing some of these same stories, and they're still subject to the system of racism, white supremacy. That's what I mean. Like, we cannot do that romanticizing and thinking just going back to doing things the way that they used to on the continent, and that's going to solve this problem. That's, another reason. Worst book ever. Many reasons. Going through Little Red Riding Hood. Again, a lot of this is, related to sex. Not that I'm disagreeing with it, just more it's kind of all over the place. He does like a detailed dissection of some of these nursery rhymes and what have you, again, uncovering a lot of the sexual innuendo within them. Not that it doesn't have a place, just I would appreciate a little more on food. And that's the end of the book. After that, he gives out a list of suggested authors, a number of them that we've read here on the cows. This is Elijah Muhammad's name is greatly misspelled. Dick Gregory. He has a few others in here. Some of these books are about food specifically. Some of them would be more like just books about general racism, white supremacy, Del Jones, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah. Ayikwe Arma mentioned it. I'm sorry, it's not even Ayikwe Arma. It's Ayi Kwesi Arna. So the spelling Kwesiarrnah. Same thing I said last week when I was talking about the misspelling of Elijah Muhammad's name. So if I was reading a book and it was Gus Z. Gatorade, we read Ayikwe Arma on the Cows 2000 Seasons, book that I have greatly loved, 2000 Seasons in the archive. Long time that we've had a Cows book club. Let's see. Other folks have comments that they wanted to make sure that we get in. Let's see. Boop, boop. Other folks that are with us, feel free to chime in.
Can I be heard?
Mr. Blue joining us. He was with us down in Florida, as was retired firefighter for our Florida retreat. Yes, sir.
Excellent. Greetings, Gus. Greetings to all the listeners. I've missed listening, but I've been listening to the archive, so I appreciate all the efforts to put the archives up and put shows up, and I'm subscribed to the email, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So even if I'm not on listening live, I can still listen. And the Dr. Frances Cress Welsing recap from what she was talking about, protesting and things, was very relevant to what we're experiencing and the feelings I'm having about COVID and the protesting and everything that's going on within the context of racism, white supremacy. Just listening to this last part that you read it and thinking about how many friends that I know that have gone to Disneyland and invested in these fairy tales was very interesting. And I had to use my critical mind and some analysis to really go back and think about how many people told me their enjoyment to going to places like Disney and recounting fairy tales that they still tell to their children, non-white black people in particular. And it becomes very disturbing, which is why now I'm understanding why you're saying, okay, this book was, whoa, intense. And then we get to this part, and we're, thinking about wanting to, some information about eating, and it becomes these type of things. And I know about human centipede only because when I was living in Laguna Beach, California, going to get my bachelor's degree in art, that my white roommate suggested that I watch Human Centipede. And they're like, you have to see it. It's amazing. And I was like, okay, whatever. And me and Miss Kaya watched Human Centipede together. And it was the most horrific movie I had ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of movies. I've seen a lot of horror movies, of course. Being here in this American place, so-called American place, there's a lot of things to view. And that was truly one of the most horrific and twisted movies I'd ever seen in my life to date. And I couldn't understand why and how it was being produced, except within the context of racism, white supremacy, that this is something that white people, so-called white people, would want to see. And it excites them in their strange historical way. Thank you, Gus. Considering going to the Washington, D.C. retreat, because it's been a struggle during COVID and living with other people to maintain eating in a healthy way, getting vitamins, vitamin D1 and thiamine for the brain, I think D for the lack of sunshine. It's good out here in New York City. Sunshine is finally coming out. But I'm still just suspect of everything that's going on with the whole pandemic. And also now that there's protesting and going on and people in the streets, and there was massive looting in the Bronx a week ago with, people looting George Floyd. So I'm just sitting, I'm breathing, doing exercising, getting out in the water, surfing, and thank you for your commentary. And I thank all the callers for their astute commentary and observations. And I guess this might be a book that maybe I'll buy and get to read and just read to be informed. But I know there's other more important books that I can look at and read and spend some time on. And rereading Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's The ISIS paper. Always a seminal work, always informative, always current. Thank you, and I'll mute my line. Good to speak to you, Gus.
Oh, for sure. Congratulations. Just finished up that degree this past spring. Congrats. Hope Miss Kaya is healthy and well. And maybe we can see you all in D.C. August 5 through the 9th. Cal's counter-racist yoga retreat. Hopefully the Rona won't cancel it, or the protests, because it has been tough, man. That's why we're reading this book. I know it's been tough. That's why I said, like, man, so people can get their diet together with all the stress and everything that we've dealt with, so that we can eat a little bit better. That was my thinking for the book. And other folks that we have not heard from, if you're with us, proceed.
Hi, Gus.
Be in Toronto. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, greetings to you, callers and listeners. For the Nutricide, I've been getting up to speed on what the topic was about. Unfortunately, it's the same observation that it was scattered. And what's unfortunate was the missed opportunity of including experts such as nutritionists, doctors, who would be able to give further information around how certain foods impact the gut, in which the gut is considered like the second brain in the body. In that if the gut is not working well, the functions of the body are also affected greatly as a result. So it's unfortunate that opportunity was missed. It would have enabled the community to have access to resources, to Black nutritionists, to Black doctors, and other experts within the medical field. It's unfortunate that a lot of information has been missed, especially in terms of food combinations. So, for instance, one of the food combinations that you should never have is protein and starch together. And I was doing some more research into this. And the reason why protein and starch are a very bad combination, one of them being, say, macaroni and cheese or a cheeseburger, is because they cancel each other out. So the protein is digested by an acid called pepsin in the stomach, and the starch from the bun or the macaroni leads to the secretion of the enzyme of Ritalin. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. It's P-T-Y-A-L-I-N, and I'm not well versed in Latin, so forgive me if I botched that up, which creates an alkaline condition. So what happens is that it becomes a breeding ground for bad bacteria, and it can result in inflammation of the gut. So, information like that would have definitely been useful. So it will help give more insight as to not only how we eat food, the timing of when we eat food, what type of food are chosen, and how we're to combine it. Yes, that's all. Thank you, and I leave the line.
Much obliged. Be in Toronto. He does have like brief sections. Now this is, again, worst book ever because the index is flawed. So I can't just go to the index and like, oh, okay, food combinations. Boop, boop, boop. He does have a brief section where he talks about food combinations, but it's not presented in an organized way. Oh, see, right there. Caucasian junk food. Oh, I thought he said here, yep, right there. Caucasian junk food companies and doctors want the baby to fatten up for the profit-making disease journey to death. Breakfast cereals are usually combined totally improperly, so if they could be digested, it would not occur. Starches should not be combined with sugar. He does have a section, like we read this. I'm not, this is on page 112. He does have it. I'm just saying that he doesn't give enough information, like it deviates to lots of, different things. Ice Age, that's where it drifts to on the next page, and that sort of thing. Like, it just doesn't give enough detailed information. So you go, oh, okay, I got it. These are food combinations and the way you can do it. And I mean, it would be really great. You give all that information so that you can process it in an easy, practical manner. And then, bam, these are maybe even some recipes that you can try out with great food combos that'll be healthy and foods that'll work together, like the avocado tomato. Bam, like, you know, that would have been great. But he does have information in here about food combinations. It's just not done in the most applicable way. I'll say that. Let's see. Other folks, star 61, or let me get in some of the other folks who wrote it. We did have folks who volunteered. I missed a couple of the emails until it was too late, and by that point, you know, figured I can go ahead and finish. But we did have multiple folks who volunteered to take over the narration. That probably would have helped Gus be a little less spicy, and I do mean a little less spicy about having to read all of this. But be that as it may, one of the folks, he wrote in, he said, I thank you for reading the book today. I know it's not the most favorite, as you have stated last week, but I think it helps others get acquainted with Dr. Llaila Afrika. His first book, African Holistic Healing, has more remedies and recipes. I think that is more important for people at this time, but I could be wrong on that. But hopefully people will look into that book as well. I am looking into reading the next segments in order to alleviate some of the burden of reading this book for you. Oh, okay. Great. Got all that. Other folks had said that too, that they thought that book had African Holistic Healing had more details and recipes and what have you that would be of more benefit. Maybe more of what B in Toronto was talking about, food combinations and such. Not sure, but wowee. After reading this, I would not exactly be excited to go and check it out. But some listeners, even before we read this book, some folks had doubted and said that they thought that was the case, that book was much better. In fact, I think even some folks said that they had both of these books, and this one they had not really finished. They had the other one, and that was much more helpful. My memory might be off a little bit, but I think it was pretty close to that. Someone having both of these, and they thought that one was a lot more helpful and a lot more specific with details. 605-313-5164, the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Any other folks have comments that they wanted to make sure they get in? Grand. If you do, you can just speak up. I also wanted to make sure that I got in the name calling. I was thinking about that. It came up in a different context, but 10 stops. Neely Fuller Jr. to write out 10 stops to work against replacing white supremacy with justice. Maybe so it doesn't take 2,000 years. For all the work, and Dr. Afrika, even a listener asked him when he was on our program, did he know about Mr. Fuller's work? And he said, absolutely, it's accurate, be helpful in understanding racism. Yep. And he said he'd read it. He said he'd read it, thought it was constructive. And it's referenced in this book. It's in his suggested reading section. And he does have some black nutritionists. Not all of the books and authors referenced are nutritionists, but he does have references for black authors, suggested reading at the end. Mr. Fuller's there, Dr. Welsing is there, and he does have some health scientists listed as well, Dick Gregory included. All of that said, for Mr. Fuller to have accurate work and to have been studying, lecturing racism, white supremacy for 50 years, for someone to actually go to him and say, hey, could you distill down like 10 things that we could be doing, should be doing to, help solve this problem, hopefully soon, like in a couple years or so? You can say, oh yeah, whammo, I got my 10 stops right here, And for all the things that he could have listed, 10 things that we could do right now to help solve racism. He could have listed like killing racists, save up, $100,000 and invest in the NAACP. Like, he could have said a lot of things. No name calling? How does that pop up on a list of 10 things that you think are most critical for someone who says, oh yeah, this is what we should all be doing with our time and energy to end racism? and they come up with 10 things and no name calling, not open a black business, not kill 10 racists, not have, a child and give them an African name. Stop name calling other black people. And the other thing that should stand out, at least to me, because I hadn't really thought of it in that context before, but I have this week, like, wow, he could have said a lot of things for a top 10, all of us. If you listed a top 10, like, no name calling, is that important? Then I thought even more, and I said, wow, it's a whole lot of black people, Dr. Llaila Afrika included, who recommend, talk about Mr. Fuller, mention him frequently. Mr. Fuller's great. Neely Fuller Jr., United Independent Compensatory Code Concept. Wow. Awesome. Best book. Whoopee. That will happen frequently. And then 5 minutes later, we got that nutritional Uncle Tom, Whitney Houston. Wait a minute. Wait, whoa. Didn't Mr. Fuller, he has a top 10 list of things that we should be doing to know that we got these nutritional Uncle Tom? Like, wait a minute. You've heard Mr. Fuller. You've heard him. You've heard Dr. Welsing, all of that, black self-respect, how we treat other black people, right? You've heard all that. Dr. Welsing referenced in this book, too, suggested reading. So you've heard all that? Yeah, but, we got these coons. You got to call a coon a coon. Apparently, many people feel that way because name calling is still very prevalent, even amongst many people. Many people. I would even say most people. In my estimation, I could be wrong, but Exhibit A, Nutricide, the nutritional destruction of black people, Exhibit A, many victims think there's some value to name calling. Somehow we're going to shorten that 2,000 years by identifying Whitney Houston and B.B. King and Bill Cosby as nutritional Uncle Toms and Sambos and coons. Somebody has said the exact opposite and thinks, in fact, that that's so important that on a list of 10 things we should do right now, no name calling is one. Just saying, 1,000 years is the type of thing, if this problem is going to take 1,000 years to solve, that's the type of thing where it's like, we should just go get crack and, the strongest drugs possible and get comfortable. Like find some white friends to get shelter and shut up about all this racism. There's no need to read any of these. At least that's my conclusion. If it's going to take 1,000 years or 2,000 years, like, let's wrap all this up, folks. We can just go and, I'm going to get some really strong jugs and don't want to talk about racism ever again. Everybody satisfied on the text? Anything else they want to make sure they get in?
Yes. What's the next book read?
The next book read. We had one more comment I want to make sure I get in. Person wrote, they said, Gus is very critical of black authors. I'm not sure if I would classify any publication by a black person the worst book ever under system of white supremacy. Well, I have classified a number of them. The Hate You Give, Black Love is a Revolutionary Act, a number of them as being downright loathsome. One thing I wanted to point out, most of the folks, they're not all of the folks. When I have, pointed out problems, errors for those particular books or patterns of anti-blackness, name calling and what have you in those books, people who have called in, with some sort of disagreement with my assessment have not called in to say, oh no, Dr. Afrika, the index is correct. He spelled Elijah Muhammad's name correctly. He spelled Ayikwe Armah's name correctly. He didn't confuse morality and mortality. I didn't hear anybody call in with that. I didn't hear that with Black Love as a Revolutionary Act either. They were just, they have personal connections to these people, which is fine. That's, I have personal connections to Pam too, but that doesn't change what's on the page. We should, in attempting to be counter-racists and in critiquing literature, writing, following logic, the number one determinant is this true? And then we go from there. When we read these, and I would even add in I think somebody also says, same person who said no name calling also concluded that racist white supremacists are the smartest people on the planet. White people aren't ignorant about racism. That's a conclusion that I came to as well. I came to the conclusion that the victims, non-white people, are confused about racism, and that is frequently reflected in our literature, especially when we are writing books talking about racism. That confusion sometimes is very flagrantly apparent. All of that said, our book club has been here for, a decade at this point. We've read many black authors, and I think I've said something constructive about a book or 2 or 10 over the years. Just maybe. Anywho, this one is not one. This one is ridiculous, and I will say the same thing I did again since we are done and I can burn this book. Woo! Man, I would look at anybody who was jumping up and down about this book, not Dr. Afrika. If you met him personally and you got constructive information, he was helpful in your life, that is spectacular, and you are a lucky individual. If you read some of his other literature and it was helpful, spectacular. Share. But this book, no, it is not constructive. It is not helpful. And I would look at anybody who was jumping up and down like, oh, wow, this book was spectacular. And it was so packed with constructive information, I would have to look at them a little bit odd. Questionable. All right. Maybe even looking out for some name calling with what they were saying. Anybody. Just based on what I've said consistently for about 2 months. Anyway, thankfully we're done. Whew. Next book, Dr. Huey P. Newton, Revolutionary Suicide. Looking forward. I think we had talked about that text before. One of our listeners, Mel, she called in, talked about the looting and hooliganism that was happening down in California. She narrated Assata Shakur's biography mentioned today. She also narrated Neil Postman's Stupid Talk, Crazy Talk, which is a fantastic book. The index is accurate in everything. She narrated that for us as well. She will be narrating Dr. Huey P. Newton, Revolutionary Suicide. I thought that was a great book to read for right now. I have not read that book, but I did stop. I said I could not take reading 2 horrible books back to back. So I started flipping through to see if it was going to be logical, if it was going to be more, Africa is the most amazing place ever and white people are dumb and stupid. And I don't think that's going to be in Revolutionary Suicide. I would be a little bit surprised, but that will be the next text starting Thursday. Next Thursday. I think that book is pretty widely available. They've done like some reprints, newer editions, so it's, well, I was going to say you should be easy to get at the library, but man, I don't know. The libraries are still closed here, so I don't know. If you have an e-library, maybe, I guess, yeah, if they have an ebook system at your library, you might be able to acquire it in that manner because it's pretty popular. It's pretty well passed around book. It's required at a lot of colleges and what have you. But I think it's constructive. I think a little like this book. I'm hesitant for a book that I haven't read yet to lean too far. But I skimmed a little bit, and it looked like, I'm not sure. Many other people have looked at it and they think it's constructive. So we'll see. But that's our next book. Mel seemed excited to get to reading it, and with what's happening now, the protests and all that, I thought it would be constructive read. Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, one of their more well-known publications, even though he published that well after the party's heyday. But Revolutionary Suicide next week on the Cows. Another black author.
Great. We made it. We meaning Mr. Clark and another non-white victim. We made it required reading for the organization that we formed back in the 80s. And it's far enough away that I've forgotten most of it. I'll start recalling it as we read it, but it's been a long time since I read it. Interesting.
That's almost a little scary, because he said earlier in the program that he remembers a lot of the 80s rhetoric about white people are stupid and black people are awesome. Oh no, like, I hope this is not going to be more of the 80s. I'll have to take a look again. Like, I'm going to have to take a look again. If it is, we are not reading this book. I'm going to have to take another look this weekend, because if it is, we will be making a switch, because I actually had two choices down for books, but if it is, there will be an immediate pause, and you tell Mel to hold the horses. I looked, but man, I'm going to have to look again, because, whoa, but let's see. Let me pull up the book. Let's see. Let me look at the table of contents at least and see what it says here. Okay. Okay, title page. That's one other thing. So this revolutionary suicide with the assistance of J. Herman Blake. That's one other thing that I forgot for folks. So, Gus T., you're often critical of black authors. Many of the books that we've read that are ostensibly by black authors have white ghostwriters. I don't know who J. Herman Blake is, but that has come up a lot. I know that came up with Frantz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth, formerly worst book ever. White ghostwriter. His wife had to transcribe it because he was so sick towards the end of the book. That came up with Richard Williams, Black and White the Way I See It, even though that's a book that I enjoyed. Madiba, Long Walk to Freedom. Even Solomon Northup, 12 Years a Slave. So many of these books have direct white influence and indirect, where you got white editors and all that are doing things, but a lot of times you got white people directly who are putting their finger and thumbprints and pen strokes all over this. So that's often something to consider. We'd have to see who J. Herman Blake is, but okay. So I'm looking at the table of contents.
I could be wrong, but I think Mr. Newton's ideas, for the most part, was specifically for this part of the world that's called the United States. I could be wrong, but I think, from my memory, I think it was prescribed, so to speak, for the most part, for non-white people in this part of the world.
Okay.
Although he may have talked about global dynamics under the system of race of white supremacy, but I think from a specific level, he was talking about ideas and whatnot that's generated in this part of the world that's called the United States.
All righty. I'm flipping through. I'm not going to read it because, if we read it, we'll be studying. I'm not seeing any rhetoric ostensibly. White people are dumb. We just need to go back to Africa. Like, he's quoting a little bit of Paul Robeson.
No, I don't recall that type of dialogue. I don't recall that in the book.
If someone, we'll have to see, but if someone were to ask, my understanding of this text, as best I can see it, is that you're in a system of racism, white supremacy, even though I don't think he uses that verbiage. But in such a system, as a black person, you're not going to be able to get a full existence of justice and what life would be like if you were not being oppressed and brutalized on a constant basis. So if you're going to be killed and mistreated anyway, you might as well make an effort to die in the process of trying to eliminate that system. You see an overwhelming force before you where they kill black people all the time. It would be better to die fighting that system than to just sit around and be mistreated and killed doing nothing. I think that's the general spirit of the book in terms of explaining the rioting that was happening at the 60s at that time, explaining the birth of the party and their conduct. I think that's the general tone of the book, which I would see a constructive value. I could be wrong, but I think that's generally kind of what it's about. Let's see. Yeah. Any other folks with comments? I'll do some more checking on it, as I have a little free time. But perhaps, we'll see. Perhaps that'll be our next book, Revolutionary Suicide, Dr. Huey P. Newton, which was referenced in The Hate You Give, where she did some name calling and bashing of Dr. Huey P. Newton, didn't even call him by his correct name. I think that's something that's important. I guess that'll be last comment on nutritional destruction of black people. I'm sure Dr. Afrika didn't do it purposely in the text, but I mean, again, if we talk about the importance of names and what have you, and just editing, like, man, to have multiple black authors to make, that this is important to only suggest black authors. I think he used the term African in the text, and then to have multiple authors' names misspelled, and Ayikwei Arma, his middle and last name were misspelled. Like, yeah, we're done. Any other folks, comments they want to make sure they get in?
Can I be heard?
Mr. Blue.
Thank you, Gus. First of all, I want to say thank you, and I appreciate it was an accomplishment for me and my family, who have historically no one has achieved this, and just in honor of my family to gain the highest degree, so-called, in my profession and field, to further help educate young black people in the importance of visual symbolism in art, and using that as a tool to counter racism, white supremacy. So thank you very much for acknowledging that. And during this whole COVID thing, there has been I've had a lot of conversations online and Instagram and Facebook and text messages and Facebook Messenger. And one thing I find very interesting is that a lot of non-white black people have talked about the ignorance of so-called white people, that they don't understand racism, and they don't really understand why it's going on. And I'm like, I beg to differ. No, there cannot be any ignorance for a problem that has persisted for so long. And also, on this program, I learned about the word and that book, I think Peggy McIntosh, Unpacking White Privilege. I could be wrong, maybe. Correct me if I am wrong. But that word, or those two words, white privilege, and I've been having a lot of discussions and with non-white black people about not, in my conclusion, not using those two words in describing racism, white supremacy, and the power that white people, so-called white people, have in this power structure, and directing them to listen. And in fact, I sent and shared the program with Dr. Welsing, because that grandsister had relevant when she was on the program and spoke about Michael Brown and the protesting, and thinking logically, not emotionally, about how we are to proceed to actually get justice and to truly protest in other terms, in other ways, economically, and not celebrating holidays and not spending our money on these holidays. So hopefully there'll be some more listeners to the C.O.W.S, because they all know I've been sending out messages and linking them to the C.O.W.S program, and I hope that other friends of mine, non-white black people, will listen to the program. And just hello, retired firefighter. Hello to be in Toronto. It would have been wonderful to come to Toronto for the yoga retreat. And thank you to Chef Indira, because her lasagna, been playing with it and testing it and doing different things, and found some good pea protein burger and meat that substitutes, and my parents, who are 82 and 90, didn't know the difference, and they enjoyed it thoroughly, and it was absolutely vegan. So I appreciate that, and thank you very much. I will mute my line to all the guests and to all the listeners. Thank you very much, and thank you, guys.
Much obliged. Love it, love it, love it. More plant-based eating. Get those fruits and veggies. That is the way to go. Dr. Afrika did say that in the book. Get more fruits and veggies. Get away from those meat and dairy products. Exactly what he just said. You can make substitutes, and it'll still be delicious. Sometimes you won't even know, that there's any difference to it at all. This week I can even pause because once you make that transition, it does take a while. Like once you're making the switch, I bet your mom talked about, some of the foods and things that she has been eating and just, dietary patterns. A lot of that stuff, those fairy tales, you set up those food patterns very early, even in utero. If your mom is eating chicken nuggets and Funyuns and all the rest of it, child is already going to have a hankering for those types of foods. And then if you start feeding them that, at 2, 3, oh man, it becomes really hard because that stuff is addictive. The fairy tales and all that too, but that stuff is addictive. Like, man, the same way with like drugs, crack, and all the rest of it. Like, you will be fiending for that McDonald's and all the rest of it. So the best thing is to try not to get that stuff started initially. And then once you realize that this stuff is addicting, like it's not just that, I don't have willpower or there's something defective. This stuff is addictive. Like, oh, that's why it's a really good reason to not even do moderation, because this stuff has addicting chemicals in it. That you can't just eat one. Oh yeah, we know you can't just eat one because we got chemicals in it. So really making that, once you can make that switch and figure out what you want to eat, all the yumminess, you can have vegan lasagna and whatever you're going to eat, tasty salads and all the rest of it. It can be great. You can eat really healthy on a regular basis, even if it's the Rona. Even then, you can eat really healthy, delicious things and still be plant-based and healthy. Today, I had smoothie, spectacular smoothie. It had a lot of spinach. I think this is the most spinach I've ever had in a smoothie. Oat milk, ginger, fresh ginger, hemp seeds, apricot, Manolo oranges, Manola orange, carrots, orange beets. I've been doing red beets for the past month or so, but I switched it up. Orange beets. Let's see, what else did I have? Dates, peanut butter, frozen strawberry, frozen banana. The orange was frozen apple as well. Wow. Absolutely amazing, super filling. I did yoga as well. Like, it really is not difficult to eat well. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars. You can eat really well, get lots of fruits and veggies, taste great where you're not feeling like you have to just eat steamed carrots and, suffer through every meal. You can eat really yummy, delicious things for every meal. That's what we did at the C.O.W.S yoga retreat. Sit down, let's have really yummy, delicious things for every meal. Enjoy it and be healthy. See if you can, survive and be healthy and not have to be frightened and have all these comorbidities. If they say COVID-19 or something else is coming along, you don't have all these problems and unnecessary weight and all the rest of it. You can be healthy, feeling good, doing well. Any other folks, comments they want to make sure they get in?
Yes. As I mentioned before, I don't recall a whole lot about the book, but I think probably one, if not the main thing that Huey P. Newton is admired for, other than his input into forming the organization that we know as the Black Panther Party. Originally, it was Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. Then they dropped the last part. But the incident that he was involved in 1967, where he was involved in the way that I factored in, it was an attempt of counter-racist violence. And he was severely wounded in the process, and eventually spent a great deal of time behind bars while the trial and whatnot was going on, and eventually was able to get out of that situation. So he's like, people kind of like, I guess I don't even want to say the word hero. I don't even like the word myself, but he's respected in that way for those particular two things. That's it.
Of White Supremacy, Dr. Huey P. Newton, author of Revolutionary Suicide, maybe our book for next week. I'll be able to confirm shortly, but inspired a lot of folks. Despite his depiction in The Hate U Give, did inspire a number of folks and was greatly targeted by racist white supremacists who sought to derail his attempted counter-racist efforts, which is, standard operating procedure. But that, I think, like I said, I think that's what the book is about. Him knowing powerful foes, whites, they're going to stomp me to death, kill me. But better for me to die fighting them than to just hang out and be victimized and do nothing about it. I think that's like a short, pithy summary of the book. We'll see. Any other folks, comments they want to make sure they get in? Overjoyed. Woo! Man, oh man. So glad to be done. Cal's Book Club, other folks, if you have comments and what have you on this book, I will not be able to field them. We are moving on. I'm just looking to be done. It is not cool to read a book that you don't find to be very constructive just based on evidence, where it's not even accurate in many points, a little sloppy even, poorly edited, in addition to other problems, but soldiered through it. For some folks, again, they were able to hear Dr. Afrika or be exposed to his material. If you want to visit his website or check out some of the other texts that he has written, go back in the archives. He was here 2011 and hear what we talked about. Justice was here. Folks called in, asked their question. In fact, Pam was on that program. She called in and got her question in, so you can go back and hear Pamela Evans Harris. Missed greatly. But she was on that program back in 2011 as well. Anywho, we will be here tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for dialing in. Hopefully it was worthy of your Thursday evening. We'll be here for Neutralizing Workplace Racism on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Woo, it has been a lot. We'll try to review what the changes have been as workplaces reopen. If, the protests are coming up, are they doing these little tacky meetings where we're going to get together and do our fireside chat and all the rest of it? We'll try to make sense of that and figure out the best, if there need to be adjustments for the code, which might be required. We got kind of a unique situation. So if there need to be adjustments, great. If things are working solid, stick to it. But either way, codification in full effect for neutralizing workplace racism tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We should be here this Saturday. Compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. We will review a very crazy week in the system of white supremacy. Wow. Just the craziness in Seattle alone this week has been wow. Man, oh man. Much obliged for folks tuning in. Hopefully it was a constructive investment of your Thursday evening. Reading more important than watching television. Absolutely. Sobriety would be best. I think that's one thing Dr. Africa and I could agree on. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. Keep our brain computer working at maximum efficiency. We will need it to solve problems. In addition to being sober, let's be buckled every time we are in a vehicle. Like, I would kind of recommend being inside these days. Like, you got looting and protesting and the Rona, and it's a lot. Armed whites, can't leave that out. Badge or no, lots and lots of dangers. Might be best to stay in. If you are going to go out, I would be very strategic about things, very alert. If anything looks unsafe, suspicious, scratch the plans. Let's get home as safely, as quickly as possible, and just have to figure something else out, because, man, it is dangerous times. The system of white supremacy is dangerous, period, but wow, this is an especially dangerous period for many reasons, not the least of which armed whites, badge or no. Again, you are sober, you are buckled. If you're behind the wheel, you are not on the cell phone. Just looking to minimize as best we can any contact with race soldiers, badge or no. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. C.O.W.S signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.